Thrilled to be here. Love the venue. I'd like to introduce Charles of Nuzo, Michael of, what do we have for you? How are we introducing you, Michael? Michael's a founder in residence at the Celo Foundation, and we also have Gabriela with us today of EthicHub. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about where the rubber hits the road, engaging last mile communities, marginalized communities, and how to include those voices in the networks that we're building. I'd like to give just a couple of minutes to each of my panelists to introduce themselves, to kick things off. So take us away, Gabriela.
Hello, I'm Gabriela Chang, co-founder of EthicHub. We are a DeFi protocol to secure lending, to secure impact investing. That is that anyone in the world can invest into smallholder farmers without risk because others have a stake collateral on their behalf. So with this, we do impactful financial inclusion.
I'm Michael Keating. I'm a founder in residence at the Celo Foundation, and I'm working on access to personal mobility. We know that there are 6 billion smartphones in the world now, but there are actually only 2 billion vehicles. All the cars, all the motorcycles, all the electric bikes in the world add up to about 2 billion, which means there's several billion people who have phones but are dependent on other people for their transportation. My last company is a company called Scoot, where we were the first company to connect an electric vehicle to an app that allowed you to just rent it and ride it anywhere in the city. And we offered electric bicycles, scooters, motorbikes, cars in San Francisco, here in Barcelona, and in Santiago before selling the company to a competitor called Bird. But we proved that if you have a phone, in theory, you can have access to personal transportation. And so what I'm working on now at the foundation is how to close that gap, for basically make it possible for anyone who has a phone to have access to personal mobility by connecting those riders of those vehicles and the vehicles themselves to the Celo blockchain.
Great. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Charles Nichols. I was a founder in residence for the first Celo founder in residence cohort that kicked off, which was really awesome. Quick plug on that. If you guys are building stuff, go and check out the founder in residence program. So I'm building a protocol called Nuzo, and the purpose of Nuzo is to enable communities to launch and govern their own marketplaces. So when I think of community commerce, I think of a platform that enables folks to buy and sell products and services to other people in their community. And that could be a community that's defined by geography, or it could be by shared culture or shared ideals. But it's often really difficult to kickstart a marketplace because you have to get to a certain critical mass of supply and demand before a marketplace becomes useful. So basically what we're doing at Nuzo is using tokens to add additional financial utility to get early adopters to join a marketplace so that we can be able to create an ecosystem or a myriad of niche marketplaces for all different types of communities around the world. And we're starting with our own marketplace called the Nuzo Marketplace, which is serving small shops in Africa, based out of Nairobi, Kenya.
Thank you all. And just really quickly on my end, if you want to talk about the Founder in Residence program, find me after this chat or on Twitter at RealJDowner. Drop me a line and more than happy to talk about it. It's a place for very early stage founders to take their first steps and build out. My work outside of the foundation is very similar to the ideal for a founder in residence profile. I've been doing uncollateralized lending for migrant populations, primarily in Colombia, and through that work, developing insights around the way that when formal financial systems fail, people turn inward. They turn to their communities, and there's actually a tremendous amount of value and trust built into these small communities that traditional financial institutions have no idea how to assess. And so to date, we've issued about 2,000 loans. Our default rate is lower than that of traditional banks, and it's fundamentally because of the trust that exists within the migrant populations that we work with. I'd like to turn to the panel, kind of like taking a step back and a zoom out. What first got me interested in crypto, what first got me captivated intellectually was seeing the way that Bitcoin specifically was useful in countries with capital controls. For those unfamiliar, you have countries like Argentina and Venezuela and Lebanon, Turkey, that have put in place capital controls as a way to try to slow down inflation. And at the macro level, the jury's out whether or not this is a good strategy or not. But on the micro level, at the individual level, it's incredibly bad for the populace. The people who most need to cross these international bridges are unable to, and those who are in privileged financial positions, they have a bank in the US or in the Bahamas or some other jurisdiction. And what was captivating to me about Bitcoin is that a freelancer, a developer, anyone who is selling their services online could get twice as many pesos for a unit of work if they were paid in Bitcoin and then off-ramped through peer-to-peer networks within Argentina. I believe at a very large scale, if we like zoom out from the current market and instead look at the decade-long view of crypto, we are starting to see the next evolution of that. It's no longer just individuals crossing these bridges to avoid capital controls. We're starting to see changes in credit markets and in refi that are stage 2 of what this might look like. I'd like to turn to the panelists at this point and ask you guys, how do you see this evolution playing out in the areas in which you're working? How do you see the people that you're working with not just getting access to capital, but how do you see them being participants in the creation of value in networks for traditionally excluded populations?
Start again with me? Okay, thank you. Well, for me, blockchain breaking the borders of money released the ability to create value in other areas of the world. Money has a different value depending where it is located. So by building bridges to reach the unbanked, the excluded from the financial system, which is a quarter of the world population. We say that quite fast, but we are talking 1.2 billion small farmers living in poverty, despite producing 1/3 of the food for the world, but the system is broken. So with blockchain, we can mend it. But going beyond money, because by simple saying, I would say, well, EthicHub provides microloans to incorporate the farmers. But it's beyond that, because agriculture is one of the main tools to climate change, to stop it. So when we support regenerative agriculture, what we are really doing is not providing money for the people, it's also healing the planet. And so it's like the inherent value on supporting this kind of agriculture.
Thanks, Gabby.
So in transportation and in closing this gap, in access to personal transportation, capital is really important, and just being able to finance the vehicles and make vehicles affordable is key. But when we're talking about protocols, I think we can get significantly more creative. And something that interests me a great deal is the idea that our locations, where we are in the world, are unique and they're valuable. But there are only so many ways that you can kind of embody that value and capture that value. So I think there are really interesting opportunities to create protocols that value where people are and maybe even where they're going. And a great example of this is Helium, for those of you who've heard of it, which you buy a little wireless data base station, and it allows you to essentially monetize your windowsill. And you provide wireless coverage to your neighborhood, and you earn a token, and that's a kind of a new form of value that allows us that anyone, almost everyone has a windowsill, can now create some value for themselves and for their community. So I think we'll see some really creative things coming in the next couple of years with people building location into their protocols, and that's actually quite a democratic way of creating value because it's something that conceptually many people can tap into that.
So there's this really cool company called Undella that some of you may have heard of that started in Nigeria about 10 years ago. And they kind of started on this idea that genius is universally distributed, but opportunity is not. And I think when you look at the continent of Africa, that is particularly true, right? Where we are today, where we're going to be by mid-century, there will be 2.5 billion Africans. The continent is growing so much faster than anywhere else in the world. How are we going to ensure that as a global community, we can enable opportunity to be provided for all of these young Africans who are being born today? And the way that we look at that at Nuzo is through small business. So in sub-Saharan Africa today, 8 out of every 10 jobs are created by small business. They contribute 60% of GDP. And yet most of these businesses operate on pen and paper. You know, they're not even Web 1.0, right? And there's such an opportunity to be able to deploy technology that probably all of us in this room take for granted, to be able to accelerate these 100 million small businesses in sub-Saharan Africa to be able to create opportunity. And I think there's a lot of different ways to kind of break that down, like what does creating opportunity mean? I think the first one is creating jobs. It's creating the opportunity to access high quality products and services, to enable folks to increase their quality of life. But kind of overall, I think that, you know, the North Star when we look at this is, what are the technologies that are most appropriate that can unlock opportunity that exist elsewhere in the world, but have not yet been translated to sub-Saharan Africa?
You're on a really interesting line there that mirrors a conversation that we were having early about the tools that population, these store owners, these independent workers across geographies and markets, that the tools they have to collectively bargain are mass protest right now, effectively. I think for you and for Gabriela, like where do you see that evolving based on the points that you've just made here?
My case, I think crypto has the potential to catalyze all the incentives for all these technologies, these amazing technologies that are being developed right now, to reach those excluded. I'm talking Latin America, Africa, Southeast Asia. Imagine all the power, all the richness on releasing the creative, the productive potential of 25% of the world population, just in numbers. That's a huge potential. So I think by creating these opportunities, we are giving a whole wave of a boost of hope to the world to find more solutions to the problems we have now, to giving these opportunities to those bright minds that are living within the problems. So who are going to be the best to find the solutions to the problems that they are trapped in?
So what you're circling on there that I'd love for you to share with the audience is, how is your approach to understanding the collateral that smallholder farmers have? How is that different from the system that they're currently operating in?
Oh, because farmers are not poor in the sense that they don't have something. They have 10,000 square meters of land. That's a lot. But the point is that their warranties, their collateral is not valid for the current financial system. So they cannot imagine what is to work all year round and to have just one crop, one income. So you need to borrow. And if no one is lending you, or you have to pay over 100% interest, that's the reality for 1.2 billion people. You have to pay so huge interest that you work only to pay that back. That's called the poverty cycle, according to the World Bank. So usually the approach that is being done by fintech is to do data risk evaluation based on data, or tokenizing assets. But this profile of farmers, they don't have data. So what we develop is a third line that we call crowd collateral. That is that third parties can buy a liquid token, ours, and stake it on behalf of the farmers. So you are providing the trust, the confidence they need. They are good payers, but you don't know it. I mean, after 4 years, we keep less than 1% default. They are very good clients, they are very good payers, but we need everyone to know. So that's why this collateral attracts more. It's like a blended finance, as we said, kind of 2.0 version. So third parties can stake confidence on their behalf, so others will invest into them and release all this value of the economy they are already working for, given for.
Thanks. Anything that either of the two of you would like to add to this line?
Yeah, I mean, so I worked with smallholder farmers in Kenya for the last decade, so I'd really echo what you said, and what you've accomplished is incredibly impressive. A 1% default rate is industry leading. It's phenomenal, and it is so important. I think through the context of marketplaces and through retail, which is kind of the day-to-day experience that I live now, there's a number of different ways that I think tokens can add value, can create utility. I spoke a little bit about how do you overcome that cold start problem in the beginning before you have critical mass of supply and demand. But I think what James was getting at was around the governance piece as well. So, I think all of us are fairly familiar with what happens when Uber goes into a market. They don't pay attention to regulators. They don't pay attention to the requirements of their drivers. And the way that the forcing function to change that is mass protest, right? And it's this kind of binary relationship with regulation. It's like we're either totally subjugated by the centralized system with shareholders, which is Uber, or we're going to snarl traffic and we're going to protest. And for nothing else, that's just an incredibly inefficient way to structure governance in a marketplace, right? Either it's working okay or it's totally stopped. And I think that when you introduce tokens and you introduce the ability for different sides of a marketplace to kind of vote on how that marketplace should be structured, you create a novel type of utility. And I think that you can create much more efficient, much more interesting marketplaces going forward.
Michael, as a seasoned veteran of micromobility, what are some of the biggest missteps that you've seen with people entering new markets where they don't have a good alignment with whatever local nuances or whatever local fraud tactics, if we're going to call them that, there might be?
I think it's easier, probably quicker to discuss the ways that people got it right. It's what I think, just kind of building on Charles's point, my last business was not a gig economy business, but I got to watch a lot of gig economy based micromobility companies grow, and eventually actually sold my company to a very, very fast growing gig economy based business. And I think just to add to this idea that protocols can, and marketplaces at least that are built around a token can not just have governance, but can also have shared ownership. And that's something that we never saw in the gig economy, really, at any significant scale. The gig economy's great virtue was the incredible pace at which the businesses grew, and the way that many, many, many people were able to participate and put their hand up and say, like, hey, I'm going to be a scooter charger now. I'm going to pick up the dead scooters off the street, and I'm going to put them in my garage and plug them in, and I'm going to put them out the next morning. I'm going to get paid. And you wouldn't call it permissionless, but it sort of rhymes with the way protocols work. People can just sort of step up and participate and earn. And that, there were also some pretty messed up aspects of that in sort of across the board, I think, in most of the gig economy companies, but the scaling and the participation was there, and it's proven. And so I think what I'm hoping to see in a number of protocols is ways that you can get that scale, and you can create opportunities for people to participate and to earn, but also to govern and to own, and then maybe you don't get some of the mess and complications and angst that some of the kind of traditional gig economies created in the mobility space.
Thank you. Very diplomatic answer. Appreciated. Um, I think one of the points that I would love to cover today too is what meditations you would like our audience to leave with today. What is that thing, that intellectual itch that you're just coming back to scratch again and again, that you think is underrepresented in the broader psyche of the industry, that you would like people to mull over as they walk away from today?
I think, for my part, I think blockchain represents community, the power of organizing all together as yesterday Seb was saying, as whole and as part of something else. So I would like people to think, to meditate about what makes a community stronger and more committed, and at the same time, it allows it to grow and to incorporate more individuals to become part of that community, to strive all together.
My son is 4, and he does not. He just doesn't get that when I was his age, there were only 5 shows that you could watch at any given time, and only at certain times of the day were any of those shows cartoons. When he is old enough to care about money, I think that he will be just as surprised that his dad generally only ever interacted with one kind of money unless I got on a plane and I flew to another country. And so this is, this gets back to Sep's vision for kind of ecosystems of value, and just the idea that blockchain and tools like it give us the opportunity to take all these different kinds of value that are in the world and make it explicit and build a consensus around it, and such a consensus that it can go from being sort of an abstract value to a value that could actually be a store of value, or it could be a medium of exchange, or it could be a unit of account. That's really, really profound and powerful. And what I think my sort of the dream is that as I'm creating protocols, and those of us on the stage and others in the room are creating protocols, that we hopefully co-creating and co-owning those protocols with their participants, that we don't just create opportunities for people to make money the way a worker makes money, or the way a boda driver makes money, or a farmer makes money, or a merchant makes money, but that we create the opportunity for people to make money like bankers make money, like actually create the money. And that the ability for people through a protocol to identify value, the value that they can see and the value that they can create, and make it, not just earn it, but actually create it and be the bankers of the value that they create, that's my sort of that's what I hope we get out of the next 10 or so years of blockchain, is just a complete paradigm shift in what money is.
That I'm gonna waffle my way through this, but that Sep talked about the different ways that one can bring money into existence, and that, I mean, in my view, the creation of money through debt is so phenomenally easy that it has won. Like, in the monoculture of money that we inhabit today, debt creation is just so easy that it has won. But what each of you is laying out here is fundamentally that there is diverse value within communities that exist today. And yes, like you through the protocol may reach out to provide some kind of startup capital, but fundamentally your community is reflecting back on you the creation of value through debts that they're repaying with you, which creates a type of social collateral, through fleets of micromobility that they're operating, or through management of an array of different stores and independent producers. Is that the gist?
I mean, that's just, this isn't specific to mobility. I mean, there's just so many, like, you talk about the social capital in your community in Colombia that allows people to, you to trust them with a moped, and the sort of the knowledge and the IP, so the intellectual and skills that are that right now are undervalued in your farmers and the value of these networks that the merchants that you're working with create. Like that's a lot of that value just isn't. It's just not that explicit. And I don't want to demean it by saying oh, we need to financialize this or monetize it, but we actually there needs to be a way of talking about it where it's better understood. And I think blockchains are very much about shared understanding. It's about consensus. So if we had a more shared understanding of some of these values, I think they would be more valuable to the person who holds it.
I think there's more value than money, and I think blockchain allows us to create these new coins, let's say beautiful money, beautiful value, that it's a tool that transforms in well-being and happiness. Because at the end, that's the value we want all to convert when we buy food, when we provide items for life, for people.
Charles, any meditations for the audience?
All right, I'm pretty loud. Everybody hear me?
Give it a shot with the microphone.
And all right. And then the other side of that, the forest coming up. And for me, I just think that maps so well to the way our society is structured, right? We all have these little forests that are interconnected, our family, our friends, our community that we engage with. Some of that is physically proximate, some of that is digitally proximate, but there's just so much interconnectivity and interdependence, and it makes us so vibrant as individuals as well as the communities within which we operate. And sadly, I think we're all familiar with forces in the world today that are trying to force us apart, right? Are trying to make it seem as if there's more distance from one another than there actually is. And I think one of the beautiful elements of this technology that we're working with is that it just totally discredits that idea of a lack of interconnectedness. Like there's just such a better way to be able to be connected, to share ideas, to share skills, to share products and services, whatever it might be, to just kind of reinforce how interconnected we are. And I'm sure many of you have seen the small pale blue dot, right? When the Voyager spacecraft went out to Saturn and looked back, and it was like all of us, everyone you've ever known, anyone in human history, has been contained in that pale blue dot in a sunbeam. And I hope that the technologies that we're building here together reinforce that.
Thanks. We have just a couple minutes left. I think we can probably take one question. If anyone has a question? Anyone? Not all at once.
Very clear.
All right. Well, any final words, or shall we wrap it up here? All right. Michael says, let's get out of here.
I'd like to say
Thanks,
something
guys.
fast. I think here at Celo Connect is the people with the brightest mind and the best intentions to change the world and the ability to do it. And all together as a community, you are the boosters of this new change. This is, I'm taking these words from someone I admire so much. This is a revolution. This is war. We have to do something now.
Heard it here first.